Somewhere on a dead stretch of highway, a brand new truck, 6 figures loaded with sensors, run by 40 onboard computers, is sitting dead. Not broken, confused. A single failed sensor telling the engine to shut itself down to protect itself. 200 miles up the road, a truck built before some of you were born just rolled past doing 70. No computer, no sensor net, just steel diesel and a driver who fixed it himself in a gas station parking lot with a wrench he's had for 20 years. Same job, same highway. One of them isn't going anywhere without a tow truck and a $400 diagnostic call. The other one is already 3 exits down the road, radio on, problem solved before the coffee got cold. This isn't a fluke, it's a pattern playing out across the industry right now. And it's why a growing number of veteran drivers are doing something that sounds backward on paper. Paying more money for engines that are decades older than anything a dealership will sell them. The industry sells you a story. New equals better. Better fuel economy, better emissions, better safety, better everything. And on paper, that's true. A modern engine sips fuel a 1990s mechanical block would laugh at. It meets emission standards that didn't exist 30 years ago. It talks to satellites, predicts maintenance schedules down to the mile, and shuts itself down before a small problem becomes a catastrophic one. Fleet managers love that story, and honestly, for a lot of operations, it's the right call. Regional routes, dense service networks, warranty coverage, modern trucks make total sense there. But ask a driver who's put 2 million miles on a rig, the kind of driver who spent nights alone on a shoulder in 3 different states, what better actually means when you're broken down at 2 a.m. in the middle of nowhere, and you'll get a very different answer. To that driver, better isn't a number on a spec sheet. It's whether the truck can be fixed with what's in the toolbox behind the seat, or whether it needs a phone call, a tow, and a permission slip from a piece of software 3 states away. Because modern efficiency comes with a price tag most people never think about, right up until the moment they're stranded because of it. Watching the clock burn a hole in a delivery window that was already tight to begin with. A modern diesel engine isn't just an engine anymore. It's a network. DPF sensors, EGR valves, DEF systems, a dozen electronic control modules all talking to each other in a constant back and forth. And if just one of them throws a fault code, the whole system can go into limp mode or shut down entirely. Not because anything is mechanically wrong with the engine itself, because a $5 sensor got some road grime on it, or a wiring connector corroded just enough to send a false signal. Here's the part that really gets under a veteran driver's skin. You can't just fix it yourself anymore, even if you know exactly what's wrong. No wrench, no manual troubleshooting, no roadside ingenuity saves you when the problem lives inside the software layer. You need a proprietary diagnostic tool that costs thousands of dollars, a subscription to the manufacturer's software just to read the codes, and sometimes a dealership technician who's hours away and booked out for a week. That's not a repair. That's a hostage situation with your paycheck on the line, and every hour the truck sits is an hour nobody's paying you. Compare that to a pre-2000 mechanical engine, something like an old Detroit 60 series, a Cummins N14, a Caterpillar 3406. These engines were designed in an era where the assumption was simple. Something will break on the road, and the driver has to be able to fix it. Mechanical fuel injection, driven by pump and timing, not lines of code. No engine computer standing between the driver and the problem. If it's the fuel line, you can see the fuel line. If it's the injector, you can pull the injector with hand tools in a gravel lot. No app to download. No dealership to call. No software gatekeeping the repair. The engine tells you what's wrong the old-fashioned way. Sound, smell, feel. And a driver with enough miles under him can usually diagnose it faster than a modern truck's own computer can. Talk to enough drivers and you'll hear some version of the same story. A modern truck throws a code on a Sunday night. On a stretch of highway with no cell service and no dealership open for 200 miles in any direction. The truck goes into limp mode, running technically, but capped at a crawl, because the system decided that was the safer failure state. The driver isn't broken down in the traditional sense. The truck is running fine. It's just been told to stop being useful. Now put that same driver in a mechanical rig. Same kind of failure, a bad injector, a clogged fuel filter, a worn belt. He pulls over, pops the hood, and 20 minutes later he's back on the road. No phone call required. Nobody had to grant him permission to fix his own truck. That gap between a problem you can solve yourself in 20 minutes and a problem that takes a tow truck and a service ticket is the entire reason this trend exists. It's not nostalgia. It's every driver who's sat on a shoulder doing math on how much that night is costing him, deciding he never wants to do that math again. Here's what surprises people outside the industry. These old mechanical trucks aren't cheap anymore. Drivers are actively hunting them down, combing classified listings, auctions, and word-of-mouth networks, and paying a real premium over comparable mileage modern equipment because the math works out in their favor long-term. Lower repair cost per incident. A roadside fix that costs an owner-operator a wrench and an hour of daylight can cost a modern truck owner a tow, a diagnostic fee, and a part that has to be shipped in from 3 states away. No emissions system failures. No DPF regen cycles interrupting a route. No DEF system freezing up and derating power in cold weather. No EGR valve clogging and cutting the engine's output at the worst possible moment. Longevity that borders on absurd. A well-maintained mechanical diesel can run well past 1 million miles with nothing but basic maintenance. Oil, filters, belts, because there's no electronic component quietly degrading, corroding, or shorting out in the background. Independence from dealership networks. On rural hauls, running routes far from a certified service center, that independence isn't a preference. It's the difference between making a delivery on time and missing a paycheck entirely. For an owner-operator, downtime isn't an inconvenience, it's lost income. Every single hour the truck sits idle instead of moving freight. That's the real reason the premium makes sense on paper as well as on the road. You're not paying extra for nostalgia. You're paying to remove an entire category of risk from your business, permanently. This isn't a story that's all upside, and any driver running one of these old rigs will tell you exactly what you give up without any sugarcoating. Fuel economy takes a real hit. You're burning noticeably more diesel per mile than a modern engine, and at today's fuel prices, that adds up fast over a full year of hauling. Emissions are far dirtier. These engines predate the regulations that shaped everything built after them, and in some regions and some urban cores, that actually limits where they can legally operate at all. Safety tech is non-existent. No collision mitigation, no lane departure warning, no adaptive cruise control watching the driver's back on a long, tired stretch of highway. And comfort is basic. Manual everything. No climate-controlled precision. No smart routing built into the dash. No diagnostics warning you a week ahead of time that something's starting to wear. Veteran drivers aren't blind to any of that. Most of them will list these downsides before you even ask. They've made a calculated trade. They're giving up convenience, fuel efficiency, and polish in exchange for control and repairability. It's not the right call for every fleet or every driver, and plenty of owner-operators still choose modern equipment and make it work. But for the ones running remote routes, tight margins, and their own repair bills with nobody else to call, it's a trade that keeps making sense mile after mile. The industry keeps selling smarter, but smarter isn't always more reliable. Sometimes it's just more fragile in more expensive ways, wrapped in a warranty that only helps if you're close enough to use it. The drivers who've spent decades on the road learned that lesson the hard way, usually stranded on a shoulder somewhere at 2 a.m., waiting on a tow they couldn't afford and a delivery window they were about to blow. So, they went backward on purpose, not because they hate technology, because they trust a wrench more than they trust a warning light, and because out here, on their own, that trust is the whole business. Next, we're breaking down exactly what it costs to keep one of these old engines legal and running in 2026, and whether that math still holds up.